excited to be here with a dear, beloved friend. Sabrina Hoggard is not only a beauty queen, but she is a health enthusiast, a mama to two that I love and adore. They're incredible. We'll get to talking about them here soon. A wifey to what I like to call a hot hubby, because I've got one too. I know how it is. And she is just a sister. And ultimately, that title is what matters most to me. And one of the reasons that I was so honored to have her come on today's show and just chat. You know how I love to just have unprobed questions and opportunities for us to just come together and have what is not going to be a coffee conversation. What are you drinking today?
Water.
Water, yeah, typical. I'm going with a lemon stevia cayenne lemon love soja water today, thanks to my hot hubby who comes home with random juices. But I think today has a lot of intention. I brought Sabrina on specifically because I feel like there's so much going on in the world in conversations that I've always entrusted to come to you about. We've been friends for 4 years now, which is crazy to think about. And since day one, I've just always felt like there was more to the conversation than there was less. Yeah. And it was always based and premised on truth. And I think now more than ever, that truth just needs to continue to be shed and cast into the world. Yeah. So thank you for being that friend that I can rely on and for being here today.
Of course. And honestly, thank you for having me, first of all. But thank you for being someone that wants to know more, that wants to learn. That's really big. I mean, I can kind of be the friend that is always ready to talk and enlighten. But if you're not someone that's willing and ready to receive, then we really go nowhere. Yeah. So we've been able, I feel, to keep the friendship because it's mutual. It's a give and take. It's not just one side or the other. So thank you.
Yeah. I think that's really good. It also makes me feel like I should have done it sooner. And I feel like there's so many people. I'm going to speak specifically for my white friends who are feeling that way, and it feels like a weird guilt that I wouldn't even have recognized had things like this not occurred. Mm-hmm. The thing is, it's always been occurring. Yeah. It's not new news. I'm really grateful that however this specific situation with George Florida arose, that it's something that has now come into conversation in a way that you can't not look that way.
That's right. Yeah.
And so for that, there is goodness in the hurt and the pain and the anger and all the emotions that we should feel. Mm-hmm. So I'm grateful for that, and his life will always be remembered in that capacity.
Absolutely.
So that's a good thing, right?
Yeah, I mean, when you leave here, you want to leave some sort of legacy, and as painful as it is to have seen the way that he died, I mean, look at what his life is representing now. Mm-hmm. Look at the outrage, that not just this nation, but around the world, you see people from different countries even like, this is not okay, this is not right. So it's horrible, like I said, as it is, and my heart goes out to his family, his mom, that he cried out for, even in that moment. I hope that they can look at this and see, wow, but look at what my family member, my loved one's life is leading to now.
It's really amazing. So there's so many different directions that we could take this conversation. And I know I called you earlier this week just in tears after listening to Stephen Furtick and John Gray kind of explore this conversation. And I really just leave it up to the Holy Spirit. Mm-hmm. I feel like that's all that we can do at this point. But I do think you mentioning that there's this willingness that ultimately has to be the answer versus questions are good and they should have, we should have the ability to have conversation about it. But the thing is where's the heart of your question coming from? Right. And so I think to start is just can you share a bit about your story? And I know when you were even sharing, you were there's parts of my story that even I could carry guilt or shame around. Mm-hmm. So just unpack that and who you are and where Sabrina came from.
Okay. Oh gosh, I don't really like talking about myself a lot, especially on camera.
Yes.
So I obviously grew up Black.
Yeah.
I am
Beautiful
black.
and black.
Thank you.
Yes.
I had, both of my parents in the home. My mom actually stayed home with us. So I always had that example of, mom being home. My dad was always a really hard worker. I had two siblings, and we had a home that was filled with a lot of love. Not perfect at all, but definitely filled with a lot of love, and also probably a lot more shielded than I would say I want my children to be right now with everything that's going on. Honestly, my husband and I have been very upfront and open with our children with everything because, well, it affects us. It's within our community. Whether we were black or not, it still affects us.
Absolutely.
And so I love my parents dearly. They raised us, in a Christian home. They did their very best, to raise us. And so I don't think a lot of the injustices and prejudices and things of that nature became real to me until I became a mom.
Yeah.
And I've got my own now. And so I'm like, whoa, my son, being in an academy that he's in, and he's like the only black kid in his class, and just different things that he's already dealt with. And so honestly, I would have to say that it wasn't until I became an adult, a wife, a mom of my black children, that I really started to realize, like, this is real. Like, this is really happening, because we were very shielded growing up.
Right.
So we weren't in circles or arenas, or maybe I just didn't notice it. I don't know. Maybe my parents just did a really good job. About shielding us. But I think also maybe out of their fear that we would turn into something that they didn't want us to turn into, they kept us away.
They exposed it to you more.
Absolutely.
Sure.
And so they kept us out of a lot of different arenas that would maybe be considered in the black culture to be the norm, for the black culture. So we weren't necessarily raised in what society or what the black culture would say is a normal black home, because there were so many things. I think that was their way of trying to keep us from, going down a different path, or going, and not in the way that it's saying, well, if I raise them to be black and proud, then they may go down the wrong way. But because they were trying to do what they thought was best, they did shield us from a lot of those things.
Yeah, and it's so interesting that plays, regardless of ethnicity, that plays to every parent-child relationship, and racial discrimination even being that, even Christianity comes into play in that regard. Do you allow them to go public? Do you keep them in this place?
Right.
Do you go to this church? Does this denomination have a conversation that's different than what we want them to be? And so I think it's that it started based on your motherhood journey has really been a common thread for a lot of us as women having this conversation, because our generation and the next generation and thereafter, this is really where the change happens.
That's right. And
we have to be understanding that the love that we're showcasing in our home has to be the love that we want them to emanate to the world.
Right. Yep.
And so with that, similar in my regard in my home, if my love that was taught to me wasn't cast out for everyone, despite color, despite denomination, because I wasn't raised in a church, despite anything, then my only example is to continue as it has been shown.
That's right. Yeah.
And so that's why bringing our children into a multi-ethnic church mattered a lot to me and my husband, and still matters. And when I walk into an all-white church, I feel awkward, and I'm white. I'm like, what? Where's Jesus? I need to see heaven. Yeah. And I want that everywhere I go. And so I love that I can know that I can always come to you for more things than just race discussions, but it's more so about mothering. And that mothering is how I know and see what your generation of child is going to be like.
Right.
And and I think even with your son being in a school that he's the only black kid in that room, that goes to show your parenting ability to say, be you and be that black proud child, knowing what things they have to face. I was reading because I just want to be informed. I think for me,
I love that too. I love that.
It's because I wasn't brought up understanding or not understanding. It was almost like they tried to put a veil of everything's okay.
Yeah.
And yet here we are in this horrible predicament where now, because of how the public school system books are and how things are shielded, we've been so shielded that now I feel ignorant. And I'm like, wait a second, this isn't my fault that I feel ignorant, but I'm ignorant. And so we as a white people, I think anyone outside of being in that specific ethnicity needs to recognize and be okay and comfortable enough to raise their hand and say, I have no idea.
I have no idea.
I had no clue. And that's really sad and sick, like literally pings my gut in such an uncomfortable way. But without facing that uncomfortability, we stay stagnant and my kids become shielded.
Yeah. Well, honestly, like you said, it does start first at home and then the school. You do send your children to school expecting that, not that they're going to teach them everything, because as a parent, it's your job first and foremost, but you do send them thinking like they're going to give them the higher education. They're going to give them
the good stuff, the grit.
But for instance, I know I grew up in Virginia Beach.
Yeah.
You grew up in Virginia Beach.
Yep.
History was up until maybe 6th or 7th grade, Virginia's history.
Yeah.
And I remember more so now with my children being in school, when they come home and they had to study, I'm always helping them study for their tests and things. And I remembered a part of the studying being why the slaves were necessary. Because,
were necessary.
The agriculture got to be, they just really needed the hands of these slaves. And I was like, and that's what y'all have to learn for the test? Like, these are the moments, 3rd grade. And this is when I started saying, this is not, let me jump into the school some more and see what other things, y'all are doing and learning.
Yeah.
And so I started at that point. I've always done my own teaching at home for them. But then I realized, okay, we need to take it to history also. Yeah. Because I need you to understand that this is not okay.
Yeah, because you were focusing on reading and math. And,
that was the big thing. Like, let's get you advanced over here. Now we need to teach you some truth over here.
Yeah, that's good.
And so by 5th grade, my son, he's now about to go to 8th grade. Oh my gosh. But by 5th grade, I had done enough teaching. I was so proud. He came home and he told me his teacher wanted them to do some type of presentation about the hardships that the Europeans faced coming over to the Americas to establish land and things, right? And so he raised his hand. He said, can I do mine on the hardships the Native Americans faced when they were invaded upon? And I was like, what did she say? He was like, that's not a part of the curriculum. I said, but you knew. Like, that just made me so
yes.
Because let's not change the narrative. Like, let's be real about what it was, And I think because that's the way history writes it. Oh, they just had the Native Americans move over here, to kind of give them more space. Like, come on, that's the way the picture is painted in these books. From elementary almost all the way through middle school. That's what you get. So it's not necessarily the individual's fault that grows up and says, wow, I'm really ignorant to this stuff, because you're expecting that, well, when I go to school, my teachers are giving me what I need to know.
Right.
And it's really not all written in there.
Right.
To find out. I remember high school is when we really started kind of digging deeper, and we learned about Nat Turner, you know, his rebellion, and then I found out that I'm actually kin to Nat Turner. And I remembered initially, because the teacher was teaching it in the way that he taught it, you know, and he went crazy and he killed a bunch of white people. And I remember being so ashamed, and I will never tell anyone I'm kin to him. You know, it took for me to get older to realize, like, if my family was being stripped away from me, if I saw my, you know, siblings and my mom being raped and abused and beaten, and would I maybe feel like God was telling me it's time to rebel, it's time to fight, it's time to, do you know what I mean? Like, and so I had to change my mindset, because the way I was taught it, I felt ashamed. You know, I felt ashamed to, he was crazy. He just killed all these poor little innocent white people, and so I had this guard up in my heart for white people because of the way, honestly, that history was taught. And honestly, I would say my parents are wonderful. I never take anything away from them, but I don't ever remember sitting down and having the conversation, because you're Black, these things you may face. Because you're Black, you never. And I regularly have these conversations with my children, because they're important for them to understand.
Absolutely.
Not for fear, but to understand why we thrive and we push the way that we do. Because for so long, we just weren't supposed to.
Right.
We weren't supposed to be able to speak well. We weren't supposed to be able to read and write. We weren't supposed to do these great things, you know?
Yeah.
And so that's something that's important for sure to have
It's
the conversation.
fundamental. I mean, without it skews the entire quote unquote system even further into the hands of the people who want to have it, right?
Yeah.
And so this is the whole thing with even the riots or conversations breaking out and people thinking that they're not the right way. It's not the right way. And who knows what's going to be said after this podcast airs. But my heart is that, and I know your heart is shared, is that like ultimately, y'all, this gets the answer.
There you go.
No history book, no public school, no, discussion that happens in one home, because it's going to take all of us together to come together and truly show the hands and feet of the Lord and truly show what love looks like, sitting across from the table and having conversations and bringing our kids into the fold of that, and like people to know that this exists right now. It's not something that was written. It's writing. We're in the writing. And so be a part of the change. Be a part of the voice. Be a part of the fact that all lives matter. Black lives included. Black lives matter, you guys. And so I was actually looking up when I was doing some research, trying to find, oh no, is it going to freeze while we're talking? I'm going to take that as a Holy Spirit gesture to just ignore that. And I was just looking up things, and it was talking about the percentage of people Black people who are affected by rules and laws underneath them committing suicide or committing adultery or committing murder. How often do they go to jail versus a white man? How often do they get pulled over? How often do they get ticketed? How often do they run into situations with the law? I mean, so many different things. And the staggering statistics will literally make you want to throw up. And it literally has nothing to do with the color of their skin, but it's based on the premise of what has been taught to all of these people prior to, without, like, just like me, without them even knowing that they were taught that. And so it feels like an injustice to humanity more than just an injustice to one color versus another color. And this is where we have to turn back to God and say, God, what did you say? What is the purpose of this? The fact that our ethnicities are celebrated in his eyes and that we are all under one race. These things are fundamental to us moving forward. And so, like, we have to educate ourselves, though, because if we just say, yeah, all lives matter and this is great, let's move forward, there's still an ignorance to the fact that how is today going to unfold for my fellow brother? Like, we had one of the girls who in core, like, she was going home from a traditional photo shoot with all of us girls, and she actually saw her son pulled over on the side of the road. And she had to pull up behind and see 5 cop cars to her one son. I think it was a registration thing. I don't even remember. And she had to yell and fight for her son, and he was doing nothing. And so the fear implanted in a mother, like, I can only imagine, because I haven't had to deal with things like that. And so I guess my next question for you, Sabrina, would be, as you're, leading this front for your home, as you're teaching your children the truth and actually having them activate in society as a strong Black woman and a strong Black man, like, how can me, like, as a sister, instill that in my kiddos as not a white man or a white woman, but as a brother and a sister of the human race?
Well, I would say, I know that you don't do a lot of TV in your
I don't, but I know you have resources.
Technology is like where we are. I'm going to tell you this. I remember my daughter being in K4. I don't know if I remember telling you. I don't know if I told you this, but anyway, she was in K4, and I had put her hair in these cute, like a puff like this, but it was 2 on either side, and I was just like, oh, she's so cute. I had taken like a billion pictures that morning, and she comes home, and she's like, Mommy, can you do my hair different for tomorrow? Like, what do you mean different? And so she's like, well, my friend such and such has, like a long ponytail that moves. And I was like, well, baby, we have coiled hair that comes up. God bless us with almost as if a crown. It grows up as a crown.
Yeah,
curls
girl.
Up, right?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, but they said my hair was crazy. They said my hair looked crazy in school. Like, I said, well, who? Well, a few of my friends. They said my hair is crazy, and I don't want to have crazy hair. I just want to have hair that's like theirs. And so in that moment, what I realized is, well, of course I didn't become angry with this 4-year-old or these 4-year-olds that told my child that her hair was crazy. But what immediately registered in my mind was their parents are not teaching them what it looks like to love all different types. And it's not even that they're telling them, oh, you shouldn't like this. It's the fact that they're keeping them ignorant from it.
Right.
Show them.
Yep.
Give them that example. Show them videos that have people of all different cultures and all different. Give them that so that as they grow older, it is not odd to them or weird when they see these beautiful coiled puffs in someone's hair. They don't assume that because all I see on TV, at home, in books, because let's be real, you don't have to be intentional to go grab a book that's filled with white children.
Yeah, right.
You don't.
Right.
They're there.
Right.
You have to be intentional now, and it's getting better now for sure, to go and specifically find a book where the characters are brown or the characters, are yellow, or you don't get that all the time. Yeah. If you go in the store to buy a doll baby for your child, you got a whole plethora. You can just pick from all the different. Oh, I can have a brunette that's white, or I can have, black hair that's white, or I can have blonde hair that's white. It's, you can literally get cleaned out quickly of the brown dolls. But I would say, especially like for a little girl, for instance, buy them dolls of all different colors.
So cool.
Because you want them to see that representation at home.
Yeah.
That's where it starts.
Yeah, it's really
So
good.
then when they get out, they don't feel like, oh my gosh, wow, it's so amazing that your hair does that. Actually, it's actually kind of weird because I've never seen anything like this before.
Right.
And now, although that child was just ignorant because they just didn't know, now I've got to build my child back up and encourage her and make her believe that, no, you're right, your hair is beautiful just the way it is. It doesn't have to change.
Right.
But that other child had no idea. So just like, for me, culture is huge in our home. My daughter's learning Russian. My son is learning French. Like, we've always just loved all different cultures. We're right now studying, we just finished South America. We're doing all the countries and capitals. And it's important to me that they know also, well, what language do they speak there? Right. What is the climate like? Okay, if it's warm there, what does that probably mean about their skin? That they have maybe darker skin because, it's really sunny or,
Right.
I want my children never ever to go in a place and say, oh, they look weird because they don't look like what I'm used to seeing.
Yeah.
They should be used to seeing all different cultures. It's all beautiful. It's like it's a rainbow.
It is.
It's like you wouldn't just paint your house one color,
right,
and only teach your kid that one color, right?
That's so true.
You would never do that,
right?
You want them to learn all the colors, purple and blue, because there are different hues and shades that are so beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, it's the same thing when it comes to cultures and races. And so teaching them that there is a difference. Look how beautiful these curls flow.
Yeah.
Our hair is more straight, but look at how beautiful, or look at how this hair has, just expose them.
Yeah. Remember my daughter being like, I really want beads like that. I'm like, I want you to have beads like that too. I want beads like that. And last night we were at dinner and one of the gals had like braids and they were way down to the back. And I was like, ooh, I bet you it looks really cool when she has it up in a bun.
Yeah.
And she's like, can I do that? I'm like, well, yours would be really dirty if you did that. Let's not do that. So it really is exposure.
Yeah.
And in that exposure, sharing the beauty of it.
That's right.
And to know that like, that is a God-made thing. There's nothing about that is Americanized versus not. Now, what gets Americanized is when that little girl actually gets her hair straightened, and then her hair is straight for so long that she doesn't even know what her actual curls look like because she was never celebrated or felt comfortable to be able to wear it like that.
That's right.
And that breaks my heart. Because the beauty of that. I just had a girlfriend who said she had straightened her hair, like done it for so many years that she didn't know what her regular curl looked like. She just shaved it all off last week.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, yeah, girl, you look awesome.
Liberating.
Yes. And so I can't wait to see as her hair grows for her to just own that. And I don't know the story behind it. I should ask her. But she, she's married to a white man. She has beautiful mixed kids. And so I wonder what that was like for her. And I think beyond just like what we look like from an outside, it's like the heart matter. That's
Yeah.
where we have to keep going back to, is that ultimately, if you believe in this, you believe that we truly all are kin.
That's right.
You believe that it doesn't matter what state we live in or where we came from, we all came from one bloodline and we all bleed the same color. And so I think, utilizing resources like that, I think for me, our library at Friends School, our new librarian has been amazing. And I didn't know these books that the kids brought home for this distance learning time. And sorry, my computer's going crazy. And so there was this book, it was called Soulway. And it was all about this. Have you read it?
We have it.
Oh my gosh, it's the sweetest book. And this little girl, she was so sad about how dark her skin was. And she wanted to be like her lighter, more beautiful sister. And after that book, I've had my eyes exposed to, there's actually been a lot of conversation about the hierarchy of even within the Black community of, oh, her skin is lighter. So that back in the day meant that they were some affiliation to a white man.
That's right.
Which then means that they get hierarchy in anything outside of slavery with hiring, with being, more beautiful. And that just kills me.
And listen, let me tell you, I love that you're sitting here, you are educating yourself. I'm going to tell you, as a Black woman, that does my heart, because even though you're asking me questions, you've also done your homework because you want to know, you want to learn more, and that's really big. And not just sitting around and just waiting to ask someone, but really doing the homework. It shows that you may not know all the things, but you want to educate yourself and become more knowledgeable in that. That means a lot. It means you see me, and that's huge. But that is, you're absolutely 100% correct when it comes to that. Unfortunately, that's something that has followed our culture throughout time. Oh, you're darker. I feel like now things have definitely gotten better. It's not over. It's not completely done. But, what were we told in slavery? What were we told then? Oh, the lighter people were better. You better try to pass for white. That's your best bet. If you want any kind, even when slavery was over, the best bet was try to pass for white. And so that's just something that we don't even realize, I think, sometimes, because I think the way society changes and evolves, I think we feel like, oh no, I'm only saying that because it's because what happened so long ago.
Right.
It's almost as if we've been pitted against each other for so long that we find excuses and justifications. But no, it is what it is. This is what happened. But we need to stop it.
Absolutely.
We've got to stop it. At some point we have to say, it stops here.
Yeah, absolutely. And it can. That's the biggest thing.
Yeah.
It's they say we the people, we have the voice. This is our ability to do this. And just in our city alone in the last 2 nights to see the beautiful marches that have happened.
Yeah.
And I've seen girlfriends who are white friends who are getting ridiculed for being there. And yet their following is Christian based. And I'm like, oh man. And one of the things that I was reading is saying that the whole problem actually didn't start in the Americanization of it. It started in the church. And that's from all the denominational breakdowns that have happened for eons before even coming to America, where, the Canaanites and Israelites and all of that, you can read it all in the Old Testament, that slavery has long been an issue before America created what it did. It's the catastrophe that it's still happening when we're all under a new covenant, that we're all human, we all have made mistakes, but it's our job now to live out that love, and people aren't doing it well. And that's the part that's so hard and disheartening. And I know that we also have the ability to continue that change, and so it is going to take all of our brothers and sisters. And I want to talk even to I have a friend who's Egyptian, Filipino, I want to bring in these Asian women and where are they in this conversation? I'm curious, because I honestly haven't seen a ton of them rising up to have conversations at all. And so what does that mean? Because it takes all of us coming together, not just white and Black, and not just being one against another, right?
Yeah. And I think the important thing, like you said, is also, while I, may be fighting for this for my Black children in the future and for my life and things, not to neglect also what other, minorities and ethnicities may be struggling with and going through as well, because it is something that, minorities have always had, maybe bounces back and forth. I feel like there's always consistently the issue with blacks.
Yeah,
Like,
right.
That's not, that hasn't changed.
Yeah.
Things have evolved, but that's always there. But there are also other races and things, and I've been reading a lot and just kind of learning the history of the Europeans' dealings with the Philippines and with China, and there's always this kind of domination takeover thing, and those things they keep going with people through generations. So I would love to actually sit like over there while you're interviewing
having those other people
over there,
not like, behind the ring light or the mic.
Yeah.
But this is so important and it's so good. I'm so grateful for you for sharing, and it is something that I hope that as people hear, ultimately they hear like us constantly going back to the fact that like God doesn't want this.
Yeah.
But at the same time, he has ultimate control and ultimate understanding and an ultimate plan that we as the people, as his sons and daughters, need to rise up and lean on him instead of leaning on our own nature, because our own nature is sinful. It will mistake. We will go back to greed and all of the things that aren't fruits of the Spirit if we don't continue to align with the Word.
That's right.
And whether we intentionally do it or not, it's the enemy is constantly going to be there. And I just pray that like people can come into understanding the Bible in a way that they never have before, because there are certainly scriptures that you could read without knowing context that can skew this entire conversation.
Yeah.
And that is what makes me so upset, because it does start in the church. And that if we can't, and the church is home, right? So I say church, I'm not envisioning like steeple. I'm envisioning our homes that then go into this church home of four walls that then go out into the world as we're called to do. And so it's just, there's so many more deeper conversations that we can continue to get into. But I think ultimately it's just about coming together and sharing our like-heartedness and our desire ultimately for the next generation, which is our babies. And I know that there are thousands of moms in this conversation that are going to continue to want to rise up and do that. It's just a matter of what are the resources and what do those conversations look like. One of the things that I've been reading recently, can't think of her last name, Latasha is her first name, the Be the Bridge book that I had mentioned to you. She was talking about the part that you were, about the history that feeds into where we are today, into our individualistic space, but then also our collective, and that we need to be in a state of lamentation. And I didn't really know what that meant. And so learning about the state of lament and being at our feet and on our knees in front of God, they did it after I had already read about it on Sunday when the black pastor was standing there and he asked white people to get on their knees. And I wasn't there, but I had a pastoral friend who was there, and she had the whole thing on video. And I was thinking, whoa. And in that moment thinking, what would I have done? And you see just the half of the congregation of people get on their knees, and you hear white people crying out, and you hear black people crying out, you hear kids crying out, you hear grandmas crying out. And to just see, just to see that, like, that's the state that we need to be in. And it's not about lamenting over the fact that my great grandpa had a plantation in Virginia, and here I am generations to follow. Did I live in any sort of like repercussion of that, good or bad, or what? It's the fact of the matter that we are here today, and I don't have to carry their guilt and shame. And that's the whole point of the cross, right? Is for us to come all together and ask for and repent and say, God, like, you've already carried this all to the cross. Like, how now do we move forward?
I would say too, I was thinking when you were talking, I was thinking about how I know a lot of people have views and things to say about the riots, and although I do not agree necessarily with a lot of the things that I will say this. I was reading something and from the Bible, and it was talking about how there was a woman that came in. I think Jesus was there at Simon's house eating, and a woman came in and she fell at his feet and started pouring the oils on him, and to everyone that was like, first of all, you are not worthy.
Right.
What are you doing
Or
here?
welcome there. Yeah.
Like, how dare you? And secondly, what a waste.
Yeah.
Why would you be wasting this good stuff? Like, her tactic, the way that she went about this situation, you know, everyone was just like taken aback, like, whoa, what is happening? This is not okay. She's not worthy. And like, who does this, you know?
Interesting.
Now, he became very judgmental and prejudiced in that. And Jesus basically presented to him like, you don't really know her story. You don't really know her struggle. If you would step back from your judgment for a minute, you know, and take a step back and realize like she's just coming because she wants change. She's seeking change, and this is her way. It's radical, but she's seeking change. And I just challenge people not to look at, you know, just the riot and the things and the crazy things, but look at, and I'm not talking about those who have gone in and stolen things and things. That's people of every race that are doing that. Those are not people that are seeking change. Those are not people that are protesting for justice. Those should not be put together. Just like good police and police that aren't, you know, making good, they should not be put together. It's the same way. The same grace and mercy needs to be given for both of the communities there.
That's good.
But what I'm going to say is also, if we could just take a step back from judging and just really look and read and go deeper and find out why is the anger there. It's almost as if a mom that loves their child so much, you know, like this kid is having these tantrums and he just will not stop. Well, okay, there may be a punishment that comes along with it, but then you have to realize I should probably dig deeper.
Right. What's the why?
What's the why? Like, why does my child that I love so much, that I care about, why does he keep having these tantrums? You, as a good mother, as a good person, as a, you know, an empathy is going to shine through, and you're going to try to dig deep to figure out, oh, his big sister has been pinching him, or his big sister has been taking stuff from him. His big sister has not been treating him right all this time. And so now he's acting out. He's frustrated. He's angry. He needs change. He needs to be seen. He needs to be heard. And what are you going to do?
That's really good. That's
and so
really good
that
analogy.
is what we have to do. We have to understand that, yes, you know, we may not like to see what we're seeing, and it's frustrating. But if you just take a step back and look and do some research and find out what's going on, you know, like it's deeper than just this. Let's not just pretend like, oh, it's only this big. No, it's deeper. There's so much more depth. If you go back and you read in history, and if we think for 1 minute that we can say, oh, history doesn't have anything to do with today, that is bananas. We still base our lives off the Constitution, right? And how long ago was that written? Okay? So, no, history has a lot to do with today. So we need to look back. We need to go backwards, and we need to read, and we need to figure out how in the very beginning, how even right after the Civil War, even though slavery was abolished, okay, then what? Literally, there was enough boldness in that time for people to say, for the white leaders to say, they need to understand that they might be free, but they are not equal. So there were so many things put in place from then all the way through history to make sure that the black man, the black woman knew you aren't equal. No, you don't get to vote. No, you don't get to study. You don't get to read. You don't get to be smarter. As a matter of fact, you're going to sign this contract and you're going to serve us. That's what you're going to do. Oh, you're not a slave anymore, but you're still going to be on this contract. There were so many things that people really need to dig deep and read about to find out what happened in history. Because it's still coming through now.
And the interesting thing about that is, when I was reading, it was talking about how some people within your ethnicity, within the black community, that was their better option. They could decide that they weren't going to follow any of those rules, but it was a better option to essentially sell themselves back into the state of servanthood, as white people like to call it, but back into being a slave, so that they could commune with certain people, so that they had opportunity, so that maybe they were going to marry into a white family, so that that heritage was now within their white, you know, lineage. I mean, so much mental play, and that is, it's just so disturbing. It's so disturbing. And there, I know, like you said, there are other resources, and you had mentioned one to me the other day on the phone. What are some of the movies? Because everyone loves to Netflix, since we might not have a lot of readers. I don't even know if the libraries are open right now. So
and this is something I feel like now it's been out for a while, but I would say a good start, honestly, would be the 13th on Netflix.
Yeah.
It's really the breakdown and understanding of the 13th Amendment and how so many loopholes were still in there to keep blacks from really, truly being free and equal in society. Yeah. So that, just be prepared, because it's definitely an eye-opener. It goes, I like it because it's a breakdown. It starts at slavery, and it talks about, after slavery was abolished, it talks about the different laws that were put in place, but then it's a time travel. So it goes all the way through time to present day about different things that were put in place to still kind of because at a certain point you could no longer say the black people need to know that they're not equal. That was not politically correct anymore.
Thankfully, but they're still happening.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So it's still happening right now.
Absolutely. So it just showed the timeline of the different tactics and things that were used through time and are still being used to pretty much the prison systems being a huge thing then and now.
Yep. Well, the prison systems that then start from the law officials, which then start from the court system, which is the Supreme, and then it's all of that. And that was what I was reading the stats around, and I'm like, wait a second. So they're committing the exact same thing, and 38% more are having death sentences versus just going to jail. So, I mean, y'all, there are so many things that I just never thought because I just trust, because I'm naturally an optimist, and I naturally am oh, that would never actually happen. They're skewing the truth. That's just lies. It's literally lies from the enemy. And so to understand the fullness of all of our stories, it's not them versus us. It's all of our stories. It's all of our history. It's my baby's understanding of themselves. And in order for them to be good citizens and for them to be true brothers and sisters, just like you said, I see you, I have to see you. I have to actually know you in order to say we're sisters. And because I've been estranged from my sister, and it's not a fun feeling, and I don't know anything she's going through, and therefore I have no right to judge even in that moment. And so all we can do is love, but at the end of the day, in order for change to occur, love is going to have to take action. Love is going to have to be the first thing to speak and the first thing to act, and it hasn't been that way.
Yeah. And I will say this too, when Martin Luther King was, because a lot of people like to go back and reference, just do what Martin Luther King did. Let's be honest here. If we really want to talk about it, do your research, do your studying. No one agreed. Well, not no one, but a lot of people also did not agree with his tactics then. And as they were marching, a lot of times they were beaten. People were, hosed down. People were thrown in prison. So even then, the way they were going about it was radical and people didn't agree. But now we can say, oh, well, look at what Martin did. He made all these changes. Had he not gone against what people thought was acceptable in society, we wouldn't be here today.
Right.
We wouldn't be, where we are. Right. So things, people feel oh, why do you have to be so radical? Radical makes changes.
Yeah.
Radical makes changes, and that's the reality of it. Yeah. And we definitely never discredit God, but, Martin Luther King was a minister. He was a minister. He was a man of God. And so the way he went about it, he was about peace. But even still, even though he was about peace, he did things that the sit-ins and, the boycott, he did things that weren't necessarily, popular in those times.
Right. Or would be viewed as just in love. It was done in action.
There you go.
Right.
It was always about action.
Yeah.
And I will say this while you were talking about the court systems and things.
Yeah.
I know I want everyone else. And I think, I'm not sure exactly which outlet, but there are some outlet that has actually made this movie free right now. Just Mercy.
Yeah.
Listen, first of all, for Just Mercy, we were in the theaters the first weekend it came out. Yes, we were excited about seeing it, but also my son is a fanatic. Yeah. This was a lawyer. He had read the book. He's got the book at home. It's a lawyer, young black lawyer, Harvard. These are all the things he aspires to be, So we had to go. He's got on all his Harvard stuff.
He's
and
so cute.
that's his aspiration. So we went and sat and watched that movie, and we went as a family, and I am so glad that we did. It's now his favorite. So we've watched it plenty more times. But what basically the basis of the movie was this young lawyer. He didn't really know what his path was going to be as a lawyer. He had to do, I guess, had to get some hours or maybe some type of internship or something, where he had to go down to Alabama and talk to some inmates as a part of his his educational experience. And when he talked to these inmates and realized, wow, they're really not represented well at all, and they're on death row. These are the inmates that are just automatically on death row. They're on death row, and they were telling, I haven't really gotten anyone to represent me. There was a lawyer that came, but he never came back. Or they were just like, oh, you just might as well take it. Like, this is what it's going to be.
Yeah.
There were so many. And so he dug deeper and realized that, oh my gosh, these people are being put on death row with improper representation.
Wow.
And so that's the premise of the movie. But the man, Brian Stevenson, he still to this day fights for those who, and maybe they were guilty of a crime.
Sure.
But should they really be put on death row for it?
Right.
Is the thing.
So
like, they were just
the
throwing
truth
absolutely
behind their,
And this took place because a lot of people say, oh, that was so long ago. I believe that the date of the movie was 89, 90.
Wow.
1989, 1990.
Wow.
Okay, we were children.
Yep.
This is very real, and I just saw an article.
Could be your dad. It could be your brother, your uncle.
Absolutely. Yeah. I saw an article recently that said, due to everything that's going on, and they always started with that, and I love that. Due to everything, or due to the George Floyd death, now they're opening up a new case where 100 inmates in North Carolina are on death row. They're going to basically get to argue their case and say, look, we shouldn't be put to death. I mean, we might have messed up or whatever the case, but they're reopening 100 of those cases.
Wow.
This is 2020.
That just goes to show you.
They're still throwing people on death row.
Yeah.
And it's...
I so want to find that article because I was so just enamored by the stats. Let's see. It was saying... Even this,
is it that one? The racism today.
Yeah. A black man is 3 times more likely to be searched at a traffic stop, 6 times more likely to go to jail than a white man. This is today's stats. If a black person kills a white person, he or she is twice as likely to receive the death sentence as a white person who kills a black person. Blacks serve up to 20% more time in prison than white people for the same exact crimes, and 38% are more likely to be sentenced to death than white people of the same crimes.
Yeah.
It's bananas, and it's so wrong. And so
your
son, no, you can't. And your son, who is aspiring to be in this same situation as this guy who made this movie and the entire story, like, I hope he gets to land in the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
I hope that these things happen. And because of the home that he's been rooted in, because of the change and the action that you've instilled for your storyline, for our storyline, that's how change is going to take place. And so, again, it circles all the way back to what we've said from the get-go. It's all about it starting at home. It's all about the love that we're showing in all ethnic groups.
That's right.
And actually putting ourselves in places where there are other ethnicities. Like, don't just be white. It's boring. I promise you it's boring. It's not fun. When I step foot in that Pentecostal, they're not Pentecostal anymore, non-denominational Pentecostal church. There are 14 nationalities there. And like, I never felt more at home than when I was there. Yeah. And to this day, I still feel that way. And I visited many, many churches since. There is something heavenly. Because it is heaven. Yeah. It's not something. It is heaven on earth when you're in a space like that. And I honestly don't even know where to suggest you go. I mean, I don't really know. And so I would just really just hope and pray that you would seek out a place of worship, go to a concert outside of your norm that is based in goodness, Christian, ideally. I was thinking of some things that you were saying, and one thing that I wanted to share, you were talking about the different colors of skin, but I was thinking about even how names are a part of that storyline. Yeah. And one of those for me, my name's Tamra, and my whole life I was always told that they were expecting me to look different when people would meet me. They thought that I would be black. And I was always like, nope, just normal white girl. I don't have the extra A, so I'm missing the extra juice. I don't know. But I was like always determined that I was like, I wanted to represent, regardless of what people thought of me, that this is a good human being. And so we have the ability to access parts of ourselves that were intended to be straight from heaven, such as like dance. I mean, you go to Parkway and like I got to dance for the first time in the light of the Lord versus dance like a white girl would dance in her booty shaking places, right? Right? So like just to know that there are so many parts of your culture that we get to celebrate when we understand them.
Right.
And even things like hair, like come braid my hair, right? Yeah. Like we get to do things and be more of who we were made to be when we come into that culturalism, when we come into knowing that the beauty and the diversity. And so, go to different countries, be in spaces that make you uncomfortable, learn the different language, learn the different zip codes. I mean, it's here. And I don't like when people say they are in a small town. There was an influencer recently and I felt horrible for her, but she was horribly called out about the fact that she decided she was going to speak out on this topic and had never previously ever spoken out on this topic and also had no sign of ethnicity anywhere around her. Her heart, I'm sure her heart posture is good. It was out of love, but there also has to be activation within you before you get to just raise up and say, I support. Yeah. There has to be like understanding. There has to be education. There has to be a conversation, and it doesn't need to be public. Call someone. And if you don't have access to that, seek it out. Go to the books first. And I think ultimately, again, just like dining next to people, strike a conversation. People just want to be seen. You want to be seen. So I could keep going because I'm so like riled up about it. But Sabrina, like, do you have any like closing words, closing thoughts? I know we've kind of thought about and prayed over this conversation for a few weeks now.
I think, I guess kind of to piggyback off of what you were saying, educate. Definitely educate. Before you jump in on, any side of things or with your ideals and your thoughts, just be willing to dig deeper. Dig deep because there's always a reason. And I always go back to children because I'm a mom. Yeah. If I just punish my children because I heard a loud bang or I saw or I kind of heard the butt end of what was going on and you're in trouble. Well, let's look deeper. Let's take a step back and figure out what is really going on. Yeah. Because if I just go into this judging the situation, guess what I'm going to do? My children are going to get used to me just jumping in, ready to, get, they're in trouble, ready to punish, ready. And guess what happens with them? Self-esteem goes lower. And then they're like, you know what? I can't ever make her happy anyway. I might as well do whatever. Right. If we don't realize that that's the same thing that happens when it comes, race upon race. Yeah. So then there are a lot of black people that may say, you know what? They're never going to hear me anyway. I might as well just be angry and just yell and just, and that can go for anyone. Yeah. So if you feel like, man, you're not even going to hear my heart anyway. Honestly, for me, I've been in situations where I feel like you're not really going to hear me anyway. I'm just going to back off. I didn't become angry, I just said, I'm just going to back off because what you're saying is you don't want to hear me. You don't want to see me. And I'm going to back off. Right. And so that's what happens. And then guess what happens even more of what the enemy loves? Division. Divide. Yeah. Even more. Yeah. Because you've not wanted to look deeper. You've not wanted to dig deeper. And this is not just for, I'm not just speaking white people need to dig. No, everybody needs to look deeper and see how they can learn about this person, that person, this ethnic group, we should all want, because we coexist. Yeah. We don't live in a world where we're the only. Yeah. And if you've surrounded yourself in a world like that, like Tamra said, that is boring. Yeah, I do not only want to, people, I got a lot of kind of backlash when I first started teaching my children French a few years ago. Why would you teach them French? Why? I mean, that's not even because it's different. Yeah. Because it's fun and it's different. And why not? People do speak French other places. They're like, well, that's not even something that could be functional here in America. And I'm like, that's okay. It's different. Yeah. It's exposure. Yeah. Then we know, okay, now this is a French food. And then this is I want exposure. And I think that if we as parents, if we as people, period, would understand that we are not the only ethnicity. We're not the only race here. There are so many others, and there's so much beauty in the other things. Mm-hmm. I mean, why not embrace that? Like, why wouldn't you want to? Yeah. Your children are going to go to school with, now if you homeschool, okay. Right. But, still, they have to go out in the world one day. They're not going to always be with you. Don't you want them to be able to go on a place and coexist with those that are around them and understand the people around them.
Yeah, it's really good. And I think speaking right to the homeschool piece is that now with this transition of virtual learning, this is an opportunity.
Oh yeah, big time.
Literally a God blessing to say, let me open your eyes. Let me show you more deeply the story of your brothers and sisters. And so take this as an opportunity. Get different reading material for them. We're asked to read 20 minutes a day every day, right? Let them read something new. Let them not read the curriculum. Let them read the Bible. Let them get into something different than what's being exposed constantly, because what's being exposed constantly is why we're here.
Yeah. Yep.
And it's our job as moms to do that. And I totally hear you, because I go to the louder child. The louder child gets in trouble first in my home. And I have found out more recently, after looking and searching and waiting before attacking, I have found that the quieter ones are really the ones you've got to look for, right? Right. So what are we as the quieter ethnic group doing while they're really loud? Because that's why we're here. And that's the why that we need to look at. We need to really self-reflect before we start going after somebody doing something different. And so I'm standing up for that. I did not go to the marches the last 2 days, but I am marching. And so I hope that this met other people who are willing to stand up or get on your knees, which was, the reference back to what happened on Sunday. I know that there are other women and other men who are ready to link arms with us, but you have to be willing to open your fist and actually hear and actually have conversations. And that's going to look different for everyone, but there are ways to do it and people who are ready for it. So thank you.
Absolutely. And I know you're probably going to put my information.
Yeah.
And I am completely open. Any extra questions, any other resources that you may be looking for. I will say, as she was talking about getting different books for your children, books can be a little pricey, but don't you worry. I am a mom that encourages reading. I have super readers at home, and so we use thriftbooks.com all the time, and they're all super discounted books. We can get 5 books and spend $20.
Nice.
So loading up those those different things, letting them see in the content, they have to read. So why not teach them to read about it? Why not let them see these different people and different races and ethnicities in the books too? I'm available. Please reach out to me. If it can be private, you can message me, DM, however you like to do it, but I definitely would love to help and answer any further questions.
I thank you for that, because I do know that there are people who haven't been exposed to other ethnicities, and there's nothing wrong with it if that's again where you've come from, but now's your opportunity, right? So expose yourself and learn. So Sabrina, I am grateful to you. I want to close in prayer. I don't often get to do that in the podcast, but I think it's necessary.
Absolutely.
God, I thank you so much for this incredible time. I thank you for your conversation. I thank you for the conversation that you're implanting on the hearts of men and women everywhere, of brothers and sisters. God, that we would not quiet our voices, but instead let our life speak. Let our hearts speak. God, that you would know and you would lead this front, that you would lead this riot, because it's deserving of that. God, that our generation to follow, that our children would not know this hatred, that they would not know the suppression, the oppression, the pain. God, that they would learn it, but that they would lead in love. God, that we as mothers and fathers would teach and open their eyes and open their ears and ultimately open their heart, because we are opening the word, the truth, to this conversation. God, that ethnicities are beautiful. That diversity is exactly what the kingdom of heaven looks like, and that we should celebrate it here as it is on earth. God, that we give people the opportunity to see heaven more often, because we are coming together to rise up in your name. We thank you that you sent your only Son, Lord, to cover the multitude of sins that we as a human race have partaken in. But God, you are good and you love us so intimately, no matter the color of the skin, that we are one race, Lord, that we are one love, and that this is your heartbeat. This conversation is your heartbeat. I pray that it falls on open ears, open eyes, and open hearts. And that Sabrina would walk out of this conversation as an additional resource to people who have never had the opportunity to conversate in the way that she is so open to do. I thank you for her family and for her children and for her children's children, and for her parents for stewarding such a woman of power. In your sweet name, amen.
Amen.
Thank you guys for being here, and we'll see ya later. If I can find the exit. It's somewhere.